Hello and welcome everyone. This is Anything But Ordinary, and tonight's topic is a viewer's request, Haunted Washington. We are your host. I am Spooky, and here is the most awesome Miss Raven.
Hey,
Hey.
I'm hoping I remember how to run everything. It's been like so long since we've been doing this, but we're happy to be back. Just to kind of let you guys know before we kind of jump into tonight's topic, Spooky and I just wanted to talk to you guys briefly. A few of you guys might be wondering why we haven't been doing our live shows as frequently as we used to. And mainly, the main reasons is being that Spooky and I have had a lot of things that have been going on in our personal life with family stuff, health issues, and work this past year. And of course, most recently, Spooky's computer's been acting up. Oh, Renee's in the chat. We just want to say happy birthday, Renee.
Happy birthday, Renee. Yeah, I need to purchase a new computer. It keeps crashing on me all the time. So if I disappear tonight for a little bit, it crashed on me.
Yeah, well, let's hope it doesn't.
Well, fingers are crossed.
Yeah, but at least you still have your Kindle handy, so in case it does, hopefully you'll be able to pop right back in.
Yeah, I got it charged up and it's ready to go. But like Raven said, we have had a lot going on in our personal lives that has kept us away. And both she and I we do miss doing these shows.
Yeah, we miss all you guys for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's one of the main reasons why we keep doing this, because we really enjoy meeting everybody and we love reading like the chat and learning all the different things that you guys talk about on these topics too. And it's
true.
Really
true.
Cool.
A few years ago, I remember mentioning to Raven how I was interested in possibly doing a radio show, and that I thought it would be neat if instead of just having these private discussions that we used to have on these topics in our Skype calls, that we would do them. Oh yeah, we would do them live on the air, because at that time I wasn't finding a lot out there, as far as these kind of shows.
Right, because we started this almost 5 years now. It's been.
Four
or 5 years, yeah. But at the time, there wasn't really a whole lot that we could find. Where now there seems to be more and stuff. But the main reason is because we wanted to kind of find a place where we could meet and interact with a bunch of like-minded people who were kind of open to friendly banter, joking about, and all that stuff when it comes to these different topics. Yeah,
people that we could learn from.
Right. And of course, you guys, Spooky and I, we never claim to be experts. We're not like a professional cable show. We don't we're not a professional radio show. We're just two friends, basically kind of like just conversing, like we would do in private, except we're doing it kind of like live on air. So you're going to hear us joking around sometimes. Sometimes you hear us slip up, or sometimes you hear us ask each other stuff, because it's live. It's just like sometimes you forget we're doing this, and it's almost like we're thinking we're still on our Skype call, because the way it's just like an open. That's kind of like how we talk anyway. We're always just talking to each other. So, and you know what? Sometimes some people tune in. They'll like us. Some people might not get how we run it, but that's okay. It's just we're just here having fun. You know what I mean?
Well, that's right. And with our shows, we are just being ourselves. Sometimes we might be serious, other times we'll laugh, or we'll even tease each other, because that's just us being us. Or the chat room people. Now there are times when they really get us laughing, but at least we know that they're in there having a good time.
It's hard not, sometimes it's hard to reach at, because some of the things they say, it's hard not to bust out laughing. But
that's true.
With tonight's topic, you know what I mean? It's one of our reoccurring themes that we've always have. Where we've been kind of covering all the states in the U.S. or trying to. We haven't hit them all yet. We still have a lot to do. Some of them we have to actually do more than, because there's just too many cool places. But from our last show, we actually had a viewer request that they wanted us to do the Washington. So.
Right. And I'm also going to mention, too, that Raven and I do not get paid to do this, nor do we monetize our videos. It's just something we do for fun and on our free time, and we are hoping to try and get back into doing our live shows again here real soon.
Yeah. We might not be able to do it every week, guys, but hopefully, Spooky's computer holds out, and we'll be trying to get...
Or I get a new one.
Yeah, hopefully she'll be able to get a new one sometime soon, maybe in the spring. But we're going to try our best, if life lets us, you know, to keep going at this, because like we said, we enjoyed it. But, you know, tonight, like we said, we're doing Washington, which I think is a beautiful state. I haven't been there yet, but when I was looking around doing
I have been there, and it is a beautiful state. Matter of fact, there was a time when I actually considered moving out there. I just loved the way it looked. I just thought it was so beautiful out there.
Yeah. Well, when I was actually, you know, because we do our research, we try to give ourselves a week or so ahead of time to try to like dig about and stuff. And it was really weird, all the stuff I was kind of running into for when it comes to Washington.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it's not just like a hotbed for like paranormal activity, but I started noticing like they have a lot of strange events that have occurred across the whole state. Because, okay, did you know that from what I was reading, Washington State is actually the 4th in the nation for reported UFO sightings?
No, actually, I didn't know that.
I didn't know.
I knew they had a lot of them out there.
I would think like Arizona, or you know, I was thinking like Nevada.
That's what I would have guessed. I would have guessed Arizona.
Yeah, but I guess
I don't know why. That's just the one that pops into my head.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to do like a UFO topic with Washington, because when I was reading down all the different reports, I could not believe how many. It was just so many. But also, well, everybody knows about Kenneth Arnold. You know, because that was the one popular report that came out of Washington. That was that guy who was like that private pilot back in the 40s who claimed that he saw like a string of, or like nine, I think it was like 9 flying, unidentified flying objects, we'll say. I can't say they're UFOs, but we don't know where they came from. But he saw them over Mount Rainier. So, I mean, when people think of UFO stuff in Washington, that's one of them that pops up, I know for sure.
Oh, yeah, and don't forget Mel's Hole. You know, that's another topic people talk about when it comes to strange stuff in Washington.
Oh, yeah. That, what's his name? Mel Waters. That's that guy from Ellensburg, Washington.
Yeah.
Because he was on, what was that, Coast to Coast? I can't remember, was it Art Bell's? Yeah,
I think he was on Art Bell before it became Coast to Coast.
Yeah, he's the one who claimed like he actually...
Or when Art Bell had Coast to Coast, sorry.
Yeah, he claimed like he stumbled upon like this huge bottomless pit on his land or something like that. Like
excuse me. Yeah, somewhere near the Manistash Ridge, I think it was.
Isn't that like another show?
Actually, this is another viewer's request we got for a topic to do, and this is the one I think where the United States government came in and kind of took that over.
Well, this is Mel's Hole is one of those debatable ones where people like, it's fake, this guy was fake, there's no name that we could find as Mel Waters, you know. So I guess when we do that show, we're just going to kind of present all sides to it, you know what I mean? Because it's a viewer request. But I also, when I was doing research, I stumbled across, because I was reading some places where there was paranormal activity, and it ended up being that there's these supposed run-ins with Bigfoots. I guess in Washington, in the Cascade Mountains and other areas, I read that there was that I found at the time, there was over 600 people who claimed they had a run-in or some kind of encounter with Bigfoot, like either far away they saw it or right up close. So, like I said, Washington's got a lot going on.
I know, and I'm sure there are more, but most people tend not to go public with their encounters with UFOs or strange unknown cryptids. They just don't want to be made fun of.
Well, no, I understand.
Or they don't want people to think they're nuts.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing with paranormal stuff. A lot of people don't tend to be open. And I think that's why a lot of us came to the internet looking for other people, you know, because a lot of people in a regular life at the time, you know, you can't really go up to your friend and be like, hey, I saw a Bigfoot eating a sandwich next to an apparition where an alien was parking his UFO. You know, I mean, we all have some type of experience that brought us looking for answers or to meet like-minded people where we didn't feel like we were going to be, you know, mocked or ridiculed or whatever. And that's another reason why, like you said, you wanted to start this. But, you know, this place
and tonight.
Well, for tonight.
Go ahead.
Well, tonight, like I said, you know, we were digging about, but there's so many of places that we found that we're going to have to end up doing Washington again. Not just tonight, but multiple times.
I believe it's going to...
There's so much stuff going on.
I believe it's going to end up being a two-parter. But tonight, what we will be doing is talking a little bit on the history of each location, as well as the supposed reports of paranormal encounters for you guys.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and start us off tonight, Spooky?
Okay. Thank you. I think I will.
You're welcome.
The Hotel de Haro. It's at 248 Reuben Memorial Drive in Roche Harbor, Washington. Now, this is located on the San Juan Island in San Juan County. This is the oldest continuous operating hotel in the state of Washington. It has 20 rooms with a great view of the harbor from almost any place in this hotel. And it has hosted several famous people, including Theodore Roosevelt and John Wayne, just to name a couple. It was built in 1886 by John McMillin, who made his fortune by mining the limestone on the island, which happens to be an important ingredient in making cement. Now, it became the largest limestone company quarry in the state, and this hotel was originally built to be used as a boarding house and a mess hall for the quarry and the kiln workers, which there were many. Workers would come from as far away as Japan for the work and the good pay. Now, in 1902, it was one of the first places to have electricity powered by its own power plant. And the hotel is believed to be haunted by the spirit of a woman named Ada Bean. Now, Ada was McMillan's personal secretary and bookkeeper, although some people believed her and McMillan carried on an affair because of their closeness. Now, Ada had her own cottage that was built for her next to the McMillan family home. And she worked for McMillan for many, many years. Until when she died. She was cremated for a time, her ashes were kept in one of the offices. And then they were later moved to the McMillan family crypt, which I will go into in a moment. And this is when the paranormal activity began. There have been reports of a female apparition in several parts of the hotel. There are cold spots, things being moved, and on at least one occasion, a gift shop worker watched as several glass shelves were broken by this unseen force. Now, employees have watched as doors opened and closed on their own, and guests have heard footsteps of someone walking up and down the halls. And when they looked out their doors, they saw no one in the hallway. And some have even reported being touched by an unseen hand. Now, as I mentioned before, Ada's ashes were transferred to the McMillan family crypt. Now you're going to get a twofer.
The call-in, the one photo, though, I couldn't find to share, but you're going to post the link.
Right. Now, I couldn't find a photo of the crypt, which is not very far from the hotel, because I couldn't find one that we could use.
Right, without stepping on someone's toes.
Yeah, without stepping on, exactly. But like I said, this family crypt, it's referred to as a mausoleum. It's not far from the hotel, and in fact, you have to walk through a cemetery, which is about a mile from the hotel, and you have to walk through the cemetery and then walk through this path that goes through the woods to reach it. Now, when you reach a sign that reads Afterglow Vista, you're at the entrance. And it is actually an open-air rotunda, and it's surrounded by 6 Roman columns. Now, John McMillan was a Mason. So everything about this mausoleum, like the 6 columns, and one column is broken, everything about even the steps to go up to it all have a meaning as far as being a Mason. I'm not going to go into it because there's quite a history of this, and we could do an entire show on John McMillan. Anyway, I could, like I said, I could go on and on about this place, but in the center of the place, I know I'm thinking about John McMillan, and I kind of lost my train of thought, but in the center of this mausoleum, there is this round stone table and 6 stone chairs. Now, each of these chairs is actually a headstone. And each of these chairs, in the bottom of the chair, contains the ashes of a McMillin family member. Now, by now, you're wondering why I chose to include this place. Well, I'm going to tell you. It is said that if you go to this place around dusk, you will see each member of the McMillin family sitting in their chair as if for supper. Now, this was the one time of the day that John McMillin loved because his family was all together, and he was definitely a family man. And business was never discussed around the supper table. Now, people who have ventured out to this place have reported that it's such a serene, peaceful feeling. And some have reported, now this place does not have a roof on it. It is completely opened. And some people have even reported going out there during a pretty heavy downpour. And even though there's no roof on the place, the rain never fell on them.
So like in the reference, we'll have the link so you guys can look at all these tons of photos of this area that she's talking about. But so basically, it rains all around there, but it doesn't affect the inside of this area?
Inside. Huh. Because you got these columns, these 6 columns, and I don't know why they refer to it as a mausoleum, because it's not really, when you see pictures of it, it's not a mausoleum. It's more of a monument or even a crypt.
Monument. More like a monument because it's not closed in.
And it's quite something to see, actually. As a matter of fact, I'd make the trip out there just to see this mausoleum. But unfortunately, 2 vandals have found the place, and they damaged the back of one chair, and they completely destroyed the back of another. But so far, that appears to be the only damage done to the place.
And I wonder if, because you said there's the ashes of the family members are in those chair cement
in
things.
The bottom of the chairs.
So that could, by damaging someone's grave, people say sometimes that stirs up the spirits as well.
Right, and I don't think they realize that the chairs are actually graves. They're not only headstones, they're graves.
Right.
And I don't think anybody, these people may not even realize that they may think that they're damaging these people's headstones, but they're also desecrating their graves.
Well, most people who tend to go into graveyards and desecrate them are very young people. I mean, I don't really imagine mature adults doing things like that, but
it's probably kids, or young people.
So, the house is very active then as well. So they're seeing both in the house, the family, and out at this monument to their wives. They're also seeing apparitions of the family.
They're seeing apparitions that sit around the table on these chairs. So I'm assuming it is a family, because the only person that is buried in this monument or in this crypt is Ada Bean, that is not a family member. And they think, one of the theories is that she was upset about being buried out there. Mm-hmm. So that's why she's haunting the hotel.
Now, as far as the hotel, when it was running, did they talk about any suicides or murders or...
I never found one thing about a suicide or a murder at this place.
Well, I was just curious. Not one. Well, I was just curious, because it is a very old hotel, you know what I mean? So,
right.
Because you said, it was in 1902?
1902.
Or 1880s.
No, I think it was built in 1902.
Okay, yeah. Well, now this place is still in operation, so if any of us who go to Washington, we can go and rent a room and stay there.
You can go to their website. They do have a website for the prices.
Okay. Do they allow people to rent out like a whole level or do like paranormal?
I have no idea. They don't say. And I didn't find anything about paranormal groups going into this place, so I'm going to assume that so far none have. I haven't found anything about a paranormal group going out to the mausoleum either.
Well, sometimes if you Google it, though, on YouTube, because when I was doing research for tonight for the pics I picked, I found that a lot of people had uploaded their EVPs or their supposed videos of apparitions or shadow entities or whatever. I mean, I
Right.
can't say like this is or this isn't. We always leave it up to you guys to decide on your own. But maybe Google McMillin or McMillin. What is it really? Coliseum-ish?
The hotel is called Hotel de Haro, Deharo, and it's John McMillin, McMillin. But there are lots of reports, though, of hauntings in this hotel, and they have even seen an apparition. I don't think there's many ghosts in the hotel. From what I found, there might be a couple, but they're pretty sure that Ada Bean is one that does haunt the place.
Well, I would just go just to check this place out. It's so cool looking.
I would go just check out the mausoleum.
Yeah. Well, that too. But also, what city is this in? It's
in it's at Roche Harbor.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's other
Roche Harbor, which is on San Juan Island, and San Juan Island is right there, pretty close to Canada, and it's in San Juan County, Washington.
I did notice, though, when I was doing, I'm sure you probably did this too when you were doing your research, that, there was actually multiple places in the same area that seemed to have activity. And it was just trying to pick which one out of each section.
Well, that's true, because there were like 4 or 5 places in this one town, and it was really kind of hard to pick which one I was going to do.
Right.
And I just decided on this one. And the reason I decided on this one was because of the mausoleum. And I was going to do one on the mausoleum until I realized that it was connected to this hotel because it's, the same guy built them.
Right. And they're both, from what it sounds like, it's very active, and people, staff and hotel visitors tend to have experiences while they're there.
Right.
So... Well, I definitely just go to check out the place anyway. It looks really... I love old buildings and old hotels and old towns where people kind of kept it, the way that it was made, because everything is just tore down now and it just doesn't have that history.
I know, and supposedly what I read, this, San Juan Island is a friendly place. They like tourists, as long as they behave themselves.
Yeah.
But... they pretty much cater to tourists, and, about the only thing going. The lime quarry is closed down. They mined it all, really.
Yeah.
But, you have fishermen and people like that on the island.
Mm-hmm. Well, other stuff.
But I think it'd be a great place to visit, just go around the entire island.
Yeah. For sure. Do you want me... All right, want me...
Yeah, I would...
Do the next one? Okay.
Sure.
St. Ignatius Hospital. I found this one. Well, I kind of Googled it, and then I was kind of like on Google Map, and I was kind of like, how you can drop the little purse around and look around. And with this one, you can actually, I'm putting in the reference, the Google Map, where you can check it out, where it's at, and you can go around the whole entire building, and it's just, it's one of those places, and it's not the only one there, because next to it is a bunch of the other old buildings of the original town where they had like the school academy and original old churches and stuff. So this little town it's in Colfax, in Washington, off of Mill Street is where it's at. And while I was looking around, the whole little town is pretty awesome too, because they have a lot of their original structures from the 1800s, and it seems to... It's not just the living, but it seems like the spirits love the town, and they didn't want, the people who, they just didn't want to move on, because it seems it's very active from what I was reading, all the different places in this place. But this hospital, basically the history of it is, there's this guy, he was a Roman Catholic priest. I think I don't remember his name. Anyway, he, during the time, felt that there needed to be better health care in the area, the Palos region area, because they didn't really have a whole lot there. So he was reaching out to the Catholic Sisters of Charity, and he was asking them, like, hey, can you guys go out there and build a hospital out in that region, because the people out there really need, because you'd probably have like 1 or 2, what do you call those type of doctors, not real doctors, but like country doctors,
country doctors,
or something. Yeah, so they really needed more. They needed to build a hospital out in that area just because of all the people who were moving out into Washington and stuff. But back then, a lot of people would rely on donations in order to build up these places. So the Catholic Sisters of Charity, they were basically promised free land and water and kind of like a cash bonus if they would build the hospital in Colfax instead of in the nearby area of like Pullman or Palos. So, of course, they liked the offer that they got from Colfax, so they went with it. So in the spring of like 1893, construction started, and it was during the construction that the sisters actually worked out of like this small wooden building that was like no bigger than a garage, and it used to be like the old bat home. And then this place was like really small. It was just basically you walk in and you could park a buggy in there or something. But they used to help the sick in there while this huge hospital was being built. But I think the first month that they were working while they were in that small building, they had over like 10 patients. And the first patient they helped had like pneumonia. And then I think like the first death happened that June 23rd that same year. And it was this guy, his name was E.F. It was either E.F. or F.E. because there's kind of like conflictions when I was looking at the different, find a grave place and stuff like that. But his name was E.F. Martin. And what he was like he was this brakeman who worked for the UPRR Railroad. And he was like the brakeman line for that. And he ended up being crushed in between two rail cars. So, of course, they tried to take care of him the best they could in that little barn building, but he had passed away. But I guess according to his grave website, he was like born in like 1848 and died in like 1893. And the reason why I'm giving this information is because a lot of people believe that this man haunts the hospital, and people seem to have the most activity with EVPs or videos and stuff with this man. But I guess he died at like the age of 45. But that's pretty traumatic to be crushed between two trains. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's a bad way to go.
But, when you read something, I wanted to see, okay, did this man really exist? So, of course, I went looking for him, and I found his death record and his his grave site and stuff. So I'll post that in the reference, too, because a lot of people who go to this hospital talk, like I said, they say they're engaging with him as far as EVPs go. But some people think... like I said, he haunts her. Sorry, I lost my mind because we're just starting over again, so I'm forgetting everything we're talking about, and I'm trying to, remember it all. But they said they helped at least 62 people by the end of that first year in that little building. So that's a lot of people to go through this little tiny garage, you know what I mean? But the construction of the hospital was supervised by this one lady. Her name was, Mother Joseph. She was at the age of 70, but she was actually an architect by trade. So she helped supervise and design several hospitals in the 5th district of Washington. So a lot of people talk about she might possibly be one of the entities or spirits that are roaming the hospitals because of how much she invested into the design and as well as working there too, you know what I mean? But it wasn't until 1894 when it was completed and it was open. Now this is a several-story building. It had about 100, it would help I think it was 145 patient room, you know what I mean? And the cost around building this at that time, I think it was $22,000, which is a lot of donated money for back then, because we're talking about the early 1900s to the late 1800s. So basically when it first, it was I think it was the first and only hospital in the whole region for a very long time. But the hospital didn't become self-sustaining until 1908. And then I think in 1911, that's when they started the school for the nursing. And it was in 1917 and also 1928 they kind of started adding more additions or improvements to this building, because they ended up adding an east and a west wing, and then they also kind of changed the front facade, designed it better, because the first building they had decks on each level, I guess for patients to go and get fresh air or whatever, but then that later changed, because that's no longer there. But I think the building has like 5 floors. They have a basement. Now, on the first floor is what they used was the emergency department, and then the second was the obstetrics wings. Ugh, I can't talk.
Obstetrics.
Yeah. Well,
I had a hard time pronouncing it too.
We're live. We're gonna mess up. I think the third floor was like the infectious disease floor. I think the fourth was for surgery and X-ray, and then the fifth was basically where the nurses and the sisters would stay. Now, there are several buildings on this land. So you have the hospital, you have the nurse's house, which I think may or may not be being torn down pretty soon. I'm not sure. I could be wrong because I only read it on like one website, so it's hard to say. You also still have the morgue there, and then they have the steam plant and the barn. Now, of course, as the years were going, when this hospital was in operation, due to lack of, private funds and donations, it was hard to upkeep. It's hard to keep upgrading to modernization equipment to keep up with,
right,
stuff like that. So by the end of summer of 1964, they decided that they were going to close the doors and they were going to build a new hospital because it's just, by that time, it was too much to put in to keep this place going. It's just better to build a new one. So the building was then turned into an assisting living facility, and I think it was used all the way up until about 2000, and then that's when like the last resident moved out. But while it was an assistant living facility, I believe they only used probably like the first floor and just kind of left the rest alone, you know what I mean, just for safety reasons or whatever. Now, it wasn't until like 2015 when the hospital was added to the Washington Trust of Historic Preservation for endangered properties list, and it was during that year the building was actually opened up for public tours. And now there is this website, which I will post in our references tonight after the show ends, for you guys who might be, interested to tour this place, do a little private paranormal investigation or with a group or whatever. But it is privately owned. It's not owned by Colfax, so don't contact Colfax for questioning, asking about this hospital, about going in and investigating. I'll put the link to the website so you can contact them and go check it out. But it was in 2017 that they decided to start selling off many of these items that were in the hospital, and it was going up. They were just selling like anywhere from like light fixtures to wheelchairs, and of course they were using the money to go back into helping, the area.
Yeah.
But now, as far as the haunting goes into this place, people have talked about not only while it was in operation that they were experiencing stuff, which seems to be the norm for hospitals, because because you have people being born and people are dying there, and you have extreme emotions from, whatever they're going through. It seems to either leave a residual type of thing, or sometimes there's a...
Right, because I've never been in a hospital unless that hospital was absolutely brand new. I have never been in a hospital that didn't have a spirit or two in it.
Yeah, but even if it's brand new, sometimes they can just attract whatever. Something's walking by like, yeah. Hey, I'm going to go haunt this place. But people have talked about, who have worked there, they said they've seen, shadow figures. They've heard disembodied voices and conversations going on when nobody's there in different parts of the hospital. Passerbyers or just workers, they report it.
Yeah.
They look up and you see these shadow beings staring out the window, and nobody's in there. It's all locked up. Or, of course, you have, like I said, the building was opened up for, all of us paranormal enthusiasts and stuff like that, where they all have talked about having tons of encounters, and they claim to have photos and EVPs as well as video clips, and they're all on that website too. I mean, not all of them. Some of them. I mean, not everybody has their stuff up there, but you can go to that website too, and you can listen to these EVPs. You can look at their photos, and there's some video clips where they're actually, what's that one thing that if you touch it, it starts blinking and makes a sound? That one of those, I don't know all the paranormal equipment. I'm sorry, guys, I don't go on paranormal investigation.
EMF detector? Well,
there's people who have those like trigger objects, and you could see them moving or the things getting set off. And there were some really interesting EVPs, but the people who are going there, they talk about seeing, they talk about actually getting touched, kicked, and slapped this one lady. I don't know if it's real or not, but there's a photo of where she has this, almost looks like a hand mark on her body where something just went whoosh. But I mean, you can't prove we weren't there, if it's real or not, but you know, they're seeing orbs that are emitting their own light that kind of appear with their eyes, not just like photographs, you know what I mean? And you know, these people are talking about how they're hearing screams, you know, or they're hearing footsteps going up and down the hallways or the stairs and there's nobody there. Or how all these objects are being manipulated or moved. You have constant doors opening and closing on their own that people are witnessing. And, you know, they go in the room and nobody's like there. Or people talk about, I don't know, it just seems like this place is really, really active. You know what I mean? Inside the hospital and on the hospital grounds. But like I said, I'm going to post a link to their website so you guys can go look at some of the people who uploaded their videos in the EVPs. And you know what? I think this place is actually on one of those TV shows too. What's it called? Paranormal Lockdown with Katrina and what's that guy's name?
Nick.
Yeah, I think they went and spent like a couple of days or nights here. What do they do, like 24 or 72 hours? I'm not really sure.
I think they do like 72 hours in a place.
Yeah, I can't remember. But I think that they went to this hospital too. And I guess they had experiences while they were there too. But, I mean, that's a TV show. I can't say for sure. Like, they always do a little added up to things to, you know, get viewers or whatever. But, you know, from what I heard, this hospital isn't the only place in Colfax. Not what I heard, I should have read. What I read, it's not the only place in Colfax where people are experiencing these strange things. But this is definitely a place where it's right up there with the other asylums or hospitals that are... I'm surprised this one's not talked about more, because everybody who goes in here seems to have an experience. And it doesn't matter if it's during the day or at night. You know, and even just
those are the places I like, when you go in there just about any time of the day or night and you're going to experience something.
Right. Well, this place, you know, it's open. You know, I think you have to sign a waiver, you know, because it's an old building. You know, you can might get hurt, or you know,
is the place still owned by the Catholic Church or these nuns? Is that who still owns it? No,
they sold the building, and then it was used for a living assistant facility.
That's right.
For a little
bit. I remember you said
and then it was ended up putting on the historic places, but it's as far as I'm aware, from what I was reading at different sites plus this website, it says it's privately owned, but the money that they get goes into upkeep or keeping the place up or whatever. But it is open. But you do have to sign a waiver to go in there, because I'm sure there's probably like mold or maybe possibly asbestos in some parts. You know what I mean? But when you're going into an old building,
that are falling down too. You never know about these places.
Right. But the from what I could see on Google Maps and from what they were talking about, all the structures are still there. The nurse's house up on the side is the hospital, the morgue, the steam place, and you know, that original little garage wooden building that the nurses worked in for a long time before the construction was finished is still there too. So this is definitely a place to go check out. Colfax looks like a really interesting... They have other places right next to it too. There's like the academy for, you know, students who are going to school. The original structure is still there from the 1800s. It looks amazing. You know, but like I said, while I was reading, there's a lot of places in Colfax that seems to have intelligent and residual ongoing, you know, so it's definitely a place, if you guys are in Washington or in the Colfax area, to go check out, for sure.
Well, a lot of these small towns do, I think.
But you have to contact them. You can't just, like, walk up and be like, hey, let me in. You have to contact the people and set up an appointment, so. And there are places to stay there. So there's hotels and motels and stuff in Colfax, so you'll have somewhere to stay. But you can't just do a walk-up and, you know, you have to contact them and set up a time and a day, for sure. What were you going to say?
So they have, well, I started to say, a lot of these small towns, and I think Colfax is a small town, They have more than one haunted place anyway. You know, that's what I like about some of these small towns. You can walk around just about anywhere and somebody's going to tell you a place is haunted. Now, this place that you're talking about, this hospital, it has its own website?
Yeah, it does, and I'm going to post it. And, like, usually when we end the show, I'll go and change the description stuff we have fairly quickly before I go to bed, and it ends up, I have the list of references where you guys can go and check out what we read or where we read it, or you can go to the websites and go ahead and go see if you can do a paranormal investigation there, I guess. It seems really active, so I definitely think you guys should. If you are in the area, this is definitely a place to go hit up, and they're still open, and the prices seems very, very cheap compared to some of the other these asylums where they kind of gouge you for steep, you know, like, hey, pay.
I know some places do. They just gouge you, you know, if you want to go in there. Some of their fees are just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. And they don't even put the money back into the building, which is frustrating.
Yeah, I know. They're in it to make business for themselves. You know, I know a few places around here. I don't mind going to a place, you know, and paying the fee for, you know, if they're putting the money back into the place, you know, for the upkeep, because I love old buildings. You know, and I think people just tear down too many of them. But some of these places, they charge such a ridiculous fee that you have to really want to go into that place bad to pay that fee.
Yeah. But this one's, it seems fairly, I don't even know what the word is, but it's worth it. You know what I mean? It's a small price, and you just have to sign a waiver. I mean, I guess I wouldn't really suggest bringing little kids, you know. I mean, I really wouldn't suggest bringing little kids on a paranormal investigation anyway. But
oh, I don't either.
But I meant you are going to have your somewhat dangers when you're going to these places. So, but would you
absolutely
like to go on to your next one?
Yes. Okay. The Butterworth Building / Kells Irish Pub. It sits at 1921 First Avenue in Seattle, Washington. Now, this is a brick building that is a bit deceiving. It's built on a steep hill, and when you look at it from the front, it is 3 stories high. But when you look at it from the back, it's 5 stories. The building is, like I said, it's brick, and it was built in 1903 by Edgar Butterworth. And what makes the building special is this building was specifically built to be a full-service funeral home. And it was the first one of its kind in the United States, and it was the first building ever to have an elevator on the West Coast. Now, Edgar Butterworth is the one who coined the words mortuary and mortician. The top floor contained 3 apartments for employees, and then the next floor down was a showroom for caskets with a separate room for children's caskets and another separate room for women's clothing, burial clothing, which ranged in price from $3 to $125. This place catered to both the poor and the wealthy of the area, and it, even if you were so poor that you really couldn't afford to pay for the funeral, they gave you the funeral for free. The next floor from that was at street level, and of course, you know, this was used for the viewings, funerals, and it contained the offices of Butterworth and his sons, who were in business with him as well, and a room that contained the so-called utensils of the trade, such as viewing beds and carpets and candles. And also on this floor was a funeral chapel. Now, excuse me. Down the hall from the chapel was the retiring room, which in today's term is a restroom. The next floor down contained the embalming fluid and the crematorium, and then the next, which was a sub-basement, contained the heating system and the storage space for the funeral vehicles and wagons and the stables. There was also a room that contained fireproof vaults where bodies could be kept for an extended period of time.
Fireproof? That's a lot of money going in there.
I know. And like I said, you know, this business catered to both the poor right up to the wealthiest families of Seattle and the surrounding communities. Now, Butterworth was actually a pioneer in the undertaking business. I mean, we could do a show on him too. But because of the time, I'm going to paraphrase this as best I can. Literally, thousands of bodies came through this business in the years it was in operation.
Wow.
In 1998, the last member of the Butterworth family to run the business sold the building. Now, by this time, the Butterworth mortuary covered an entire city block. And to this day, it's known as the Butterworth Block. The basement today, which is accessible from the street behind the building, which is Post Street, is Kells Irish Pub and Restaurant. Now remember, this is the floor where the embalming room, the crematory was located, although some say it was actually the stable and heating system and wagon storage.
So where they're drinking is where they were storing the body.
Where the pub and the restaurant is said to be the embalming room and the crematorium. Now, several historians, though, disagree on what floor this was actually held. Some say that it was that particular floor, and some say it was actually the sub-basement.
Mm-hmm. Both of them could have been used.
That's very true. But it is the one with the reports of paranormal activity. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's considered the most haunted tavern in Seattle. The ghost show Ghost Adventures investigated this place, and they claim to have captured the photo of a deformed or mangled child.
I didn't see that episode.
I didn't see it either. Of course, I quit watching that show a long time ago.
Hey, you're blunt and honest. I'm done with that show. Moving on to the next. Okay.
I moved on to the next. I should mention, though, that a lot of the bodies brought in during its days as a mortuary were at one time patients of Dr. Linda Hazard. And in fact, all of her patients passed through this place. Now, Dr. Hazard believed that the best way to treat diseases was through starvation.
Hold on. Oh, sorry. I was actually going to do something on her. I was actually going to do her hospital tonight. But then I thought, no, I'm going to save her for a whole show, because she would be for, you know how sometimes we do a show about women who kill or whatever, or deadliest women throughout history? She's definitely going on deadliest history of women.
Reading about her, I definitely thought that she would make a good show.
Yeah, she's definitely going on one show on her own.
She treated her patients with a regimen of very thin broth and enemas. And needless to say, she did not have many, if any, patients that survived.
Mm-mm.
Now, all of her patients passed through this mortuary.
Their bodies?
Now, yeah, their bodies. This was the mortuary where those bodies went. Now, there are many, many spirits that occupy Kells. But there are two that are very prominent, and they manifest on a regular basis. One is a little girl with long red hair, and she likes to play pranks. Now, she is reported to also like to play with the children that visit the pub/restaurant, and she is even known to make toys for them. And she can also physically manipulate things. Now, she is considered to be friendly, and people are actually encouraged to interact with her if she happens to materialize around them. Now, like I said, it's impossible to know who she is, because she's believed to be one of the thousands of children who died in the influenza epidemic of 1918. Now, this other spirit is one they call Charlie. Now, Charlie will manifest in this big Guinness mirror that hangs in the pub. And he will also disappear almost as fast as he appears, except on nights when there is a band playing. Witnesses have said that when there is a band playing that night, if he likes the music, he will appear in this mirror and he will stay there for a bit.
Is this like mirror... Because I don't want to lose my question real quick. Is this mirror like, okay, the bar's right there, so the mirror's like hanging behind the bartenders, or is this just...
It did not say where this mirror is hung. It just says that it's a big mirror that's hung in the restaurant, and it has Guinness on it.
Okay.
So they don't say exactly where this mirror is in the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
the little girl and Charlie?
Charlie is also considered to be friendly, and they say, he just seems to be enjoying the music. But Charlie and this little girl are not the only spirits in the place, but they are the most consistent because they appear just about every night. Well, the little girl is said to appear anytime during the day or night, and she mainly appears in the restaurant part. Now, the owners and their employees and customers have all reported encounters with spirits. There have been reports of plaster falling off the walls, glasses sliding off the bar onto the floor, also shot glasses kind of flying off.
Mm-hmm.
In 2005, the owner's sister claimed, and this happened on All Saints' Day, which is November 1st, that she saw a tall man who appeared to be part black. He had thin hands and was wearing a suit, and he walked to the end of the bar and then just faded away in front of her. Employees have reported voices when the pub was closed and no one else was in there. There have been reports of cold spots, footsteps at night after pub hours, doors opening and closing on their own. But none of the employees or owners have reported being afraid. They all say that the spirits seem to be friendly, although I don't know how friendly you can get with glasses flying off, and that they have not tried to harm anyone. And really, after all these years, this paranormal activity has just become a matter of routine.
Well, see, here's the thing. Okay. Remember when we did, and I'm sorry, was that, you were stopping there, right? So I could ask you.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Because I was trying to think of everything you just said. I don't want to, lose all the information you're putting out there. Remember when we did the shadow show?
Yes.
And we talked about bars and stuff, or people who seem to drink or do drugs tend to be harassed by spirits or shadow entities or negative things. Now, the spirits there might be friendly, but maybe these shadow entities that people are experiencing. So some people theorize, okay, because I don't know, I'm not an expert, you're not an expert. We just kind of banter about with everybody that's watching with us live in chat too. But some people think that shadow entities were never really human spirits, and they think that they're just like these lower level entities that just are kind of like parasitic, I guess, in a way, and that they feed off of people. And I guess when you're drinking or doing drugs, your inhibitions are lowered, so it kind of makes you probably more susceptible to this. So maybe the things that are whipping these items about, or hitting or punching or touching, you know what I mean, in the negative manner, might be more of these lower level entities that might be coming in just because of the drinking that's going on.
I couldn't say, because there was nothing in these reports that said anything about people seeing shadows. Usually when they see the apparitions, they're basically looking at them. But the two that do appear on a regular basis are the little girl and the one they call Charlie.
Right. Well,
and the glasses are not aimed at anyone. They're just like, some glasses will just slide off the bar, and it's the same way with shot glasses. How the bartender's got these shot glasses in front of them where they measure out, the drinks and stuff.
Uh-huh.
That they're just coming off of that. But there was nothing in there that said that any of these things flying around were aimed at anyone. They were just, just something that was there, and then it's on the floor.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying that these are just different thoughts or ideas or opinions.
Right.
Or
and I understand that
people discuss when it comes to places like this. And, this is just another possible or plausible idea to why those type of things occur. Because maybe Charlie and the little girl are nice. And like you said, there was thousands of bodies that had gone through this.
Yeah, there were literally thousands of bodies that went through this. This was a full service. This is the first full service funeral home in the country. You know, I mean, they sold caskets, they sold burial clothing, you know, headstones. They did it all. They did it all here. Mm-hmm. And the thing of it is, there is another bar in this building. Oh. And there's offices in this building, but none of them are reporting paranormal activity. It all seems to be centered right there in Kells Irish Pub and Restaurant. And a lot of people think that it's because his restaurant is where the embalming room, the embalming room and the crematorium were located, although some people dispute that it was actually that floor.
Okay. I'm not sure, but I think BBG's asking, like, I wonder, do they go into the buildings each side of it? They probably do. But, okay, so basically this... well, hold on. This building it's open on one side and it's also open the other side, but you said there's two bars in this place, but the upper level then is probably the office building.
Right.
Okay. Because somebody was asking what the upper floors were. But maybe the office building isn't as active during the day, but it might pick up later on in the evening. Because sometimes people...
Or they're not reporting it.
Right. Or sometimes, you know, people see stuff and they're like, I am not telling my coworker. Because you don't want to be ridiculed the rest of your days you're working there.
And that's entirely possible. But it seems like if the rest of the building has paranormal activity, it seems like that the majority of the activity is being reported from Kells. Now, there's to go in from the street level.
Did you say cows? What did you say?
Kells.
Oh, sorry.
Kells. Kells.
Thank you. I didn't know what you said. I was like,
there is a bar in there that you go into from the street level, but you have to go behind the building to get into Kells.
Oh, okay.
You can't get into Kells from street level. You have to go behind it for that. But there are two entrances, you know, the back side, which is Post Street, and then the main street. What did I say the name of that street was? First Avenue. To get to access the other bar and to go up to the offices.
Okay. I was just asking a couple of questions that people had in chat too. So,
sure.
But yeah, I mean, I could see why this place is active just because of the building that it was used for, plus all the people, and you know, the victims of that doctor lady. You know.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know if they have.
Which I would sometime I would like to do a show on her because.
Why don't we do that next after? Not the next one coming up is missing people, but why don't we just go ahead and do a show on deadliest women throughout history, and she'll just be one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, now that it's on her mind, we'll just like, okay, we'll add that list next. But
I'll write her down.
But she definitely, from what she did, I could see why some of those spirits could be angry because they didn't get the help that they needed and they ended up dying. But I think at one point she even starved herself to try to prove a point. But she never really... She actually became a doctor through the loophole of what Washington State had. And she wasn't really a doctor. And she wasn't really a holistic doctor either. She was just some lady who decided, you know, she basically killed people for their money, claiming that, you know, through this stuff. But
that's what I thought too. Anyway. We'll save that for the show.
But that's why this place probably has a lot of activity for sure, you know. But Seattle alone is so, I mean, that's like what has the most population anyway when it comes to Washington State. And also, there's like tons of places in Seattle.
Seattle had tons of haunted places. Yeah, tons of them. But it's a big city. You know,
Seattle tunnels. That was another thing that the ghost hunter people did. And there's so many buildings in so many areas that, well, of course, people are going to talk about Kurt Cobain, right? They claim that the park bench he was sitting on before he was either. Okay.
Yeah, but Kurt Cobain actually lived in Aberdeen, Washington.
Well, they're saying that there's the Seattle area, too, that he seems to haunt as well.
Yeah.
But people are saying, we're not saying, we're just saying what people talk about.
Right.
But, I mean, of course, when you think of Washington, you think of Seattle, because that's, you know, and the
Well,
music that comes out
when
of
I first saw this particular one, I almost didn't do it until I read where it had used to be a mortuary, and I thought, oh, well, this should be interesting.
Yeah. Do you want?
And that's what actually caught my attention.
Right. Do you want to just take a quick 2-minute break so I can go get a drink of water, and then we'll continue with the second hour of our show?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, guys, we're just going to take like a quick 2-minute break. I just need to get a drink of water because I'm overcoming a cold. And then we'll be back, and we have a couple more other places to talk. Thank you for hanging out with us. Please stay with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Anything But Ordinary. I'm your host, Raven, and tonight's topic is Haunted Washington, where we're discussing several different locations throughout the state that are said to have paranormal activity. I am Raven, and Spooky's back with us too, right?
Yep.
Cool. So, as far as that other place that you were just talking about, the Butterworth Building, it sounds like a place I'd like if I'm in the Seattle area.
I'd go there to eat, just see if I could see old Charlie or the little girl or anything.
Or just to, even the energy, you know, because it sounds like it might just have residual, too, as far as intelligence.
I don't know. Well, yeah, that's true. The little girl and Charlie seem to be intelligent hauntings, but I'm sure there's a lot of residual in there.
Yeah. It definitely sounds like a place I'd like to go. But then there's a lot of places in Washington that I would like. Well, there's a lot of places in the United States and or the world I want to go to anyway.
All right.
But, you know, as far as the Kurt Cobain thing, when I was doing the research and stuff, people were saying, you know, of course, that they've supposedly seen him in Seattle as well because of the whole music stuff or whatever. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying it's something I came across and read upon. You know what I mean? So it's just, there's a lot of stuff going on, I guess, out there. We you know, we can't prove it or disprove it, but it's definitely a thing. Do you care if I go ahead and do mine next now? I don't know if you're
go
done
ahead.
with the
Knock yourself out.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were done with the Butterworth one because it had a lot to it. So.
Yeah, it did have a lot to it, and I could probably go on about it and go on about it, but I'm done.
Oh, wait. I don't know. Richard said today's would have been Kurt's birthday, too. I don't know if it was his birthday or not. Kurt Cobain's. I don't know that.
I wasn't a fan, so I really don't know.
Oh. Well, let's just move on so we don't cause problems with those who... I think it said he was born February 20th, 1967. That's what Richard wrote. So, well, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
The next one that I'm going to do is the Rothschild's house. Now, this is located in Port Townsend, Washington, off of Taylor Street. And I kind of picked this place because I really liked how it looked and the whole area and stuff like this. But this is a 2-story, kind of like a Victorian-era home. And it was built like in the, I guess like the late 1800s, towards the ending of it, by this, basically for this man. His name was David Charles Henry Rothschild. He was this German immigrant who kind of, he came over here and he met up with a couple of his brothers who were already over here, and they kind of gained their wealth through mercantile businesses, like stores and stuff. And they called their stores the Kentucky Store. Now he had a few other kind of business adventures throughout the years. I mean, I could talk a lot when it comes to this man because he did a lot. He traveled, he did like tons of stuff. He started off poor and basically became a millionaire, so to speak, you know what I mean? But he lived in California, and then he moved to like Nevada, and then he in and out like a few different places. But by the mid 1800s, that's when he moved over to Port Townsend, and it was in 1863 when David got married to his wife Dorit. Now she was like a 17-year-old to one of his business associates, not his brother, because he had other associates that he did other business with, okay? So she came over from Germany, and they ended up getting married, and they stayed in Washington. But during their first few years of their marriage, they ended up staying above one of their stores. And then I think it was like in 1868, he ended up purchasing the land where they constructed this new family home. Now they had... Well, of course, it was him and his wife, and I believe they had like 5 children. They all kind of resided in this 2-story house. And it, from what I was reading, it has like 4 bedrooms on the top level. And then on the main level, there's like a kitchen, a parlor, a dining room, and then there's like another room that's kind of like a bedroom. And then, of course, you have the cellar area below. And they also had like a stable and a carriage house at the time. And then they also, of course, they had their servant house, and then there was like all this rose and herb gardens all around the house. So it was really beautiful yard, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until 1918, I think. So you go from the 1863 until 1918, where they didn't have any indoor plumbing or anything, because they refused to, the women, they just didn't really want to upgrade the house. They just wanted to leave everything the way it was. So they didn't get an indoor washroom until like the 1918. So they were living like old school for like a long time. But
yeah, that would have been the first thing I would have insisted on.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? They liked the way they were living. But the house has like this double fireplace, and the house is still filled with all the original furnishing of the family's items. Nothing's changed since the family lived there in the 19th century wise, but basically what happened is through the years, David had his business with his brothers, and then he tried other, business adventures or whatever, but his stores started, they started to struggle. And then of course you had the 1886 recession, which kind of messed up a lot of people. So he kind of got depressed and he was stressed out. And what he ended up doing, which is the guy, he ended up ending his life. He committed suicide. He didn't commit suicide in the house. I think he went down to the water's edge or a park nearby, like a little section nearby, and he took his life. So although, the family was struggling at the time, his sons stepped up. Both of his sons stepped up, and they ended up managing to help the business stay afloat. And then they ended up succeeding through those rough years of the recession. And, you know, then they moved the store, I think, across town to a different section, whatever. But Dorit, the wife, and her one daughter, Emily, I think her name was, they ended up staying in the family home the whole entire time. And they chose to not modernize the house, like I told you. They didn't really make any improvements. They lived kind of frugally. And they liked it. They enjoyed living that way, by firelight, by candlelight, you know, and all the old ways. But Dorit, she ended up passing in 1918. And then Emily, I think that's her name, she ended up staying in the home until 1950. She passed away. She didn't have a family. She didn't have kids, you know. And then when she passed away, her youngest brother in the family, they ended up inheriting this place. And instead of like selling it off or having it torn down, they ended up just deciding to donate it to the Washington State Park and Recreation. And all the family items that were in the home, just donated it, because it's basically like you're stepping back into the 1900s. And it was like in 1962 is when it was listed on the National Registry of Historic Places, and then it was opened up to the public. Now, I think it's the Jefferson County Historical Society who actually operates the tours through this home. And you can go there between May and September months. And when they kind of took the place over, that's when this historical society ended up updating the house. They put water in, they put heat in, they put electricity. So now there's, you know, the conveniences of modern day. It's because of the historical society putting it in. But before that, the family lived without all that, you know, water by pump and all that stuff. But people say that this place is haunted or has, like, you know, paranormal type of activities occurring there throughout the years. And it's people, both the staff who work there or visitors, have said to have experienced, you know, of course you have like your different like cold spots, or all of a sudden you have like this drastic temperature change, you know, in the home. Staff had talked about having or hearing and seeing doors opening and closing on their own when no one was in or around that area to cause it happen. People talk about hearing, you know, faint whispers or conversations being heard while you're there, and nobody's there but, you know, like the staff person or the person who's like standing there because they're visiting the museum. I guess that's what you kind of call it now. And some of the people think that it could be Dorit or Emily, because they loved the place so much. They didn't want to change it. They enjoyed living that way, and they just think that they just stayed on there, you know. And they're just kind of making themselves known to others when they're visiting their home, because you know, people are checking out their personal items in their house, you know what I mean? But also people think that maybe some of the stuff that's occurring there could be residual that's brought on from all the family's items still being in the home itself. So I'm not sure.
Well, and probably the modernization of the place too.
It kind of pissed them off, yeah. Because Dorit never wanted to modernize the house ever.
She was happy living the way she was. Right. It sounds like her and her daughter both.
It's like homestead lifestyle, you know what I mean?
Right, and construction will bring on paranormal activity. I mean, you know, if there's spirits in the house,
but if they
construction and renovations will make them active.
Right, but they fought the whole time ever upgrading this home. So maybe when they upgraded it, putting the water, electricity, you know, all that stuff in there, it could have upset them a little bit. But I am going to post the link to the website to this place too, so you guys can go check out all the photos from inside the home, so you can actually see like each room and all the different items. It's like amazing inside. This is like one of those places why, you know, I pick because I love like the historical aspect of these things. It's like you're stepping back into a time. It's like you're going in a time machine and going back in time. So you get a little history, you get to see some cool stuff. And plus, you know, you might get to hang out with a ghost. So it's one of those places I thought it was amazing, you know.
I like places like that. I like places where it's got, you know, all the original furniture, you know, and belongings and stuff, you know. And it's like you say, it's that feel of just stepping back in time and to see how people lived back then.
Mm-hmm. So you want to go ahead and hit your next one up?
Okay. Billy's Bar and Grill, another tavern. This is at 322 East Huron Street, Heron, in Aberdeen, Washington. Now, this is a brick building that was built in 1904. And over the years, it's had many businesses like pharmacies, taverns more than once, a grocery store, a photography studio, a cigar shop, and yes, a brothel. Matter of fact, there's been a brothel in there more than once.
I was muted, but I was giggling like right when you said, like when you started giggling, I was already giggling. So you must have like tuned in and known I was giggling because I was trying to be muted. But okay, go ahead. Sorry for cutting you off.
That's all right. In the 1950s, a madam shot her pimp on the second floor, and the bullet hole is still there. One of the more interesting things about this place is the name, because according to local legend, the place is named after a man who actually existed in Aberdeen, and in the beginning was one of Aberdeen's more colorful characters and respected citizens in his time. And he is said to have also ran a business in the building, a tavern and a gambling hall. And this person is the infamous serial killer, Billy Gril. Now, we could do a show on Billy, too. And, but for the time, like I said, I'm going to paraphrase this the best I can. William F. Gohl was born on February 6th in 1873 in Germany. Now, little is known about his earlier life. It is known that he settled in Aberdeen for a while, and then he went to the Yukon to mine for gold, but he was unsuccessful, so he returned to Aberdeen, and for a while he was a bartender. Now, he was suspected of murdering migrant workers whose bodies were found in Grays Harbor. Aberdeen sits on a harbor, and I think it's kind of in northern Washington. He is also suspected of other crimes happening around Aberdeen and Grays Harbor, but at the time, nothing could be proven. Now, somewhere along the way, he became a union official for the Sailors Union of the Pacific. Now, this actually helped his criminal career, because in 1905, to break up strikes, the strikers would be beaten and sometimes even murdered. And these barbaric practices were actually normal during that time. And if you can call assault and murder normal, but law enforcement usually looked the other way or were paid to look the other way. Now, the union office, being right there at the pier, made things even simpler for Billy, because when sailors came in, they would go to the union office to collect mail or even put money into safekeeping until they left Aberdeen. So Billy would engage these sailors in conversation to find out if they had family in the area, and he would also find out about valuables and the money the sailors had. And he would then choose his victims, and he would shoot them right there in the office and then dump their bodies into the harbor.
Dang.
Well, between 1905 to 1910, over 40 bodies were found floating in that harbor.
How did he get away with that many without somebody?
They couldn't prove it. They couldn't prove it. They couldn't prove it was him, even though he was the prime suspect.
Okay.
He was charged because nothing could be proven.
Mm-hmm.
And he was pretty much careful about going about his criminal activities. Now, Billy's Bar and Grill. Some accounts I read said that he owned a business there, while another account said that he worked there and sometimes gambled there. Either way, people would disappear from the place not long after meeting Billy. And it is believed that Billy murdered over 100 people, but strangely enough, he was only tried and convicted of 2. And the reason Billy got caught was because his accomplice was captured and he started singing like a canary.
Yeah, that's usually what happens. He
told everything.
That's usually what happens to a killer. Most of them get caught quickly.
I can't remember his accomplice's name right off the top of my head, but Billy was sentenced to life at Walla Walla, Washington, and his accomplice only got 20 years.
Didn't it have the death penalty in Washington, or don't?
I'm not sure if they did. Billy was not sentenced to death. He was sentenced to life. And he was later moved to an asylum where he died on February 3rd, 1927, and he died of pneumonia. He died of, let's see if I can pronounce this, erysipelas, which is a severe skin rash, dementia paralytic, and syphilis. The dementia paralytic actually was brought on by the syphilis. So anyway, on to the hauntings. Employees have reported shot glasses flying off the shelves, cold spots, disembodied voices, numerous apparitions, and there are numerous ones in there. And they have seen apparitions of sailors, of prostitutes, of men in suits, and of loggers. Loggers did a lot of business at these places. And one apparition that there's one apparition that people believe is Billy himself, and the rest of these apparitions are actually believed, except I guess for the prostitutes, because there was nothing in there about him killing women. Is believed that many of the apparitions are Billy's victims. But he even killed people out of this place.
No, I believe it. I mean, wow, it's a serial killer. I mean, not alone, he's probably haunting the places. So are his demons. You know, he wasn't the first serial killer in the United States, but he was the first one in the Pacific Northwest. We've done so many shows about different serial, because we had the Bloody Benders, and we had those two brothers. What was their name? Yep. You know, where everybody kept saying they're the first serial killer. I'm like, you know what? I highly doubt they were the first serial killer. But, well, everybody says that. It depends on what part of the country you happen to be standing in at the time. Or the stories and stuff. But, yeah, I mean, that alone, the horrific acts that this guy, Billy Gril was an evil person, you know. And like I said, they believe that he killed over 100 people. And in 5 years, they found 40 bodies floating in that harbor. And they were all kinds of people. They were sailors. They were loggers. There was a lot of logging in the surrounding area, you know, and loggers spent their money in these places, you know, these taverns and in the brothels and stuff. And like I said, there is at least one actually documented murder that happened inside the building. And that's when the prostitute shot her pimp. Mm-hmm. It's still, I mean, put all this together, it kind of makes sense why there might be the activity that seems to be occurring there, for sure. We should do a show on the Union, too. And from what I understand, the place, it doesn't really sit that far from the harbor, so it was nothing for him to, you know, carry the body to the harbor. It was even said that he would take a skiff or a rowboat, mm-hmm. and take some of the bodies out in the middle of the harbor and dump them, you know, thinking that they would float out into the Pacific Ocean. Or sink or something. Or sink or something, you know. But a lot of the bodies, instead of going out to the ocean, came back into the harbor. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's a good thing that they did, so that something could stop this. But this man got away with this for a lot of years. A lot of years. Yeah. And the only reason that he really got caught was because of his accomplice. That's crazy. This is where people. And then he got life in prison. Take notes. Note to self: don't have accomplice if you ever become a serial killer. You know, which we don't condone killing. If you're going to commit a crime, don't tell anybody about it, and don't have anybody help you. Yeah, but we're not condoning crime either. We're just saying. No, of course not. That seems to be how they're always getting caught. But eventually, you're going to get caught anyway. Back then, you know, wasn't. You know, people could get away with stuff because of how technology and all the stuff we have now, which me and you love watching cold cases. Like, what's that one show we watched now on Thursday? What the heck is it called? The Killing Fields. Killing Fields and stuff. We're always watching these cold cases and stuff. And the technology that they have now, just from taking the DNA, they have this stuff where they can get your hair, or what is it, like a whole face of everything, or, you know? What was that program? Yeah, they got this one deal. It's called NanoLab, where they can take DNA and they can actually do a 3D facial structure. Construction, yeah, of either the victim or the perpetrator. Right. I mean, and they've actually solved some cases now with that. So, I mean, it's definitely different now compared to how it was back then. But, I mean, I could definitely see why this area's got problems, just because of it could, it could be like the negative energy created by this.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, this man was just evil, And he was already, by the time he moved to Washington, he was already a, what do they call it? He was an accomplished criminal. So this wasn't a man, a good, respectable citizen that moved there. This man was already a criminal. He just appeared to be respectable.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like how they all work anyway. I mean,
Well, that's true.
That's their way of luring people in and stuff, but man.
And like I said,
I wonder if people who are like psychics have gone to this place, or people who are like really sensitive, or do they talk about having
This is another place that I couldn't find. Now, I'm not saying it never happened, but this was another place where I couldn't find, because I did look to see if any of the the paranormal shows went in to investigate, and I couldn't really find anything, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing out there.
Well, it hasn't, maybe televised ones haven't been out there yet, but personal, how people have their own paranormal.
I'm sure, but there was nothing mentioned about paranormal investigators going into the place. And I can understand why that there are numerous. I mean, they said that there are numerous and numerous and numerous apparitions. You could be standing at the bar, and one guy said that he kind of looked over his shoulder a little bit,
mm-hmm.
and there were 7 apparitions standing there like they were in a conversation. And
wow,
and it, yeah, and they were like 6 of them were sailors, and 1 was a woman, which I'm assuming was the prostitute.
Maybe she was a lady of dignity and just came in for a drink.
Ladies of dignity back then would not be caught dead in a bar.
I was trying to give this woman, a little, something positive, but you're like.
And the madam that shot her partner there, she, I cannot remember her name. I remember her first name was Edna. She ran when she ran a brothel in the upstairs of this place. Hers was considered one of the fanciest in the county. This was high class, if you can call a brothel high class.
Well, we did a show about that one lady who had a high class brothel. Was her Alice? What was her name? Poker Alice.
Poker Alice, yeah. But like I said, people that would come into this place, men, and the thing of it was, it never said anything about him killing women. It was always men, and he was careful about who he selected. They said he was a talker, and he could get people to talk about themselves, and he would find out if they if they had family in the area. He left them alone.
So he kind of had some kind of conscience. Where he's like, if they have a family,
if they had family in the area, he didn't kill them because the family would come looking.
Oh, okay, so he didn't have a conscience.
And it depended on how much money they had on him or valuables. He was selective about who he killed.
Well, most of the time, men back then they killed men back then because the men were the ones who had the money. Women couldn't really have jobs back then. You could either be a school teacher or a
seamstress.
Or a seamstress, yeah. Or a prostitute. That was it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really.
And prostitutes really weren't known to have a lot of money. But it's like I said, there were a lot of people that this man killed over 100 people. And surprisingly, he was only tried and convicted for 2 of them.
Right. Well, makes sense why this place has. And they talked about.
And he didn't kill anybody that lived there either. And I'm assuming it was for the same reason. If they lived in the area, they had family in the area. Family was going to come looking for that person. Mm-hmm. He was just. You have to admit, in a way, he was kind of smart about what he did. He wasn't smart about the accomplice he picked.
Clearly. But how many people are like, looking to get hired to be a serial killer's accomplice,
Well, you don't run an ad in the paper for them,
Maybe they did back then. I don't know.
Who knows?
Because we did the baby farming. They ran ads for that. Who knows what they were running ads for back then? You know what? They run weird ads all the time. Look at Craigslist now. So
yeah.
You remember that time you read that ad where somebody was looking for somebody to travel back in time with them? And you were gonna...
I answered that.
I know.
I never heard from the guy.
You must have missed it. You found somebody else. Anyway, so I was gonna ask, so they basically see a lot. Do they see full body apparitions, or are they just seeing shadow entities? That's one thing I forgot what you said. At the bar. Did I lose you? Oh no, I wonder if her computer finally crashed. It lasted most of the show when I got 30 minutes left. Let me check Skype real quick and see if she's here. Oh, no. Okay, she's probably turning her Kindle on now. We were hoping that her computer was not going to pop off, but she'll be back in a second here, guys. And I'll add her. She's got to turn on her Kindle here. So what you were saying about Billy's brothel thing, I think is kind of interesting, just because I think personally that maybe this stuff there might be residual just because of the negativity and the things that he was doing. Plus, who knows what kind of happened with the prostitutes, between the prostitutes and the sailors. I probably brought on some type of energy imprint maybe too. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pop in the next one, and hopefully Spooky will pop back on here in a second. This one that I did, I kind of picked because I thought it was interesting. It's called the Iron Goats Trail. It's on Stevens Pass in Central. Oh, here she is. Let me add her. Hello, Spooky.
Hello, I got thrown off.
Okay, hold on. We got to hang up the other people that popped on this call, Nell and Richard. Yeah, your computer almost made it through the whole show. You know what I mean?
It almost made it.
Yep. So let me check the levels real quick to make sure that you're still up, because sometimes the levels go down on us when you get kicked off. Okay, that's up and Skype's up. Okay, basically I'm going to pop into the next one here, Spooky. So since you're kind of having computer issues. But the one I'm talking about now is called the Iron Goat Trail on Stevens Pass. It's in Central Cascade mountain area in Washington and Leavenworth, I think it is. Now, the Iron Goat Trail is located on the upper and lower sections of this like abandoned Great Northern Railway grade. Because where the trail was, it once used to be like the rail line for the Northern Railway for many years. And Stevens Pass was named after this man. His name was John Frank Stevens. Now what he did, he went out there and he conducted a survey of the area to find like the best area to like lay the tracks for the railway crossing over the Northern Cascades and into Seattle and all that stuff. Now hundreds of immigrants worked at clearing out giant trees and blasting through rock to kind of level out the area for the tracks. And there's like several switchbacks were created, because they had to go up and then go down. Basically, there's like 3 on the east side and 4 on the west side of the Cascade Crest. And they said like it was for the switchbacks, it was like somewhere up to about 12 miles of track that was laid that connected the east side of Stevens Pass to Wellington. Now, the crossing of this area, from what I was reading, was extremely challenging, because the train would often have to, of course they have to stop for like coal and water and whatnot. But okay, so they would come up to like Wellington, they'd stop, fill up on coal, get their water, and before taking on the switchbacks of Stevens Pass. And what they would do is they would have like 2 engines, like one would be on the front and one would be on the back. So one would pull the train while it was going up one switchback while the other one was pushing it. And then when they, come to the next switch, then it would switch where the one would push and the other would pull. And they had to keep doing that back and forth, going up these several different switchbacks just to get across the Stevens Pass. And they would say that it would take somewhere, of course you had because you're going up these mountains back then, they would also have rock slides that would also delay these passenger trains and stuff. But they would say that the total time it would take for the train to get over the switchback, like over the Cascade area, Stevens Pass and all that stuff, would either take between 5 or somewhere between 5 to 20 hours, depending on the weather condition. Because you have like rock slides, or you'd also have like snow, like avalanches and stuff hitting those tracks and covering it. But could you imagine being the time that you hit the train and you'd be stuck on there for 20 hours just trying to pass this little 12-mile track section? I'd go crazy, dude. But there were reports of at times when the trains were going through here that there would be 25-foot high snow walls on each side of the track where the train would be going through, you know? So that's like super high snow on these different switchbacks. And they say many times in the winter, like these snow sliders would trap the trains for days at a time while hundreds of like men would just be shoveling to clear out these tracks. And in March of 1910 is when one of the worst train disasters in the United States, let me switch the picture here, in history occurred, and it killed up to 96 people when this avalanche took out 2 trains, okay? Now, one was a passenger train, and the other was a mail train, and like where they delivered the mail. And it all started around, I think, it was the end of, from what I was reading, it was like the end of February of 1910, you know, and for several days, I think it was like 9 days, there was like this blizzard. Now, of course, because I was reading different sites and stuff, and some of the history sites that they had written up on it, and they said that it was snowing about 12 inches every hour, and on one of those days, it had up to 11 feet of snow that fell. So this is a huge, like 9 days of hellish snow time, you know what I mean, to be stuck on these trains. Now, during this time, these 2 trains were stopped, or was said to be trapped at the Cascade Tunnels depot on Stevens Pass. And I got one of those pictures here where I'll show this. You guys kind of have an idea of what it looked like. And one of the trains was the Seattle Express local passenger train number 25, and the other was the first mail train number 27. And so they were stuck here at the end of February, I think maybe around February 20th, something, or whatever. But they were sitting there for like 9 days during these blizzard hitting. And it wasn't until like March 1st when the weather started to changed, and they had light rain, lightning and stuff starting to happen around the time. But 6 days later, I guess, is when they said somewhere around 1 a.m. this lightning strike hit the area, and it hit like this large portion of snow, and it ended up triggering like this huge avalanche. And they said that this 10-foot high snow wall, about like a half a mile long and a quarter mile wide, it just started racing down towards the town. And it just missed the Bailey's Hotel, but it ended up hitting the railroad depot. And this avalanche, it had such force that it slammed into these 2 trains, and it tossed them downhill over 150 feet into the Ty River valley below. And they said like 96 people were killed, 35 passengers, 58 were railroad workers, and then there was like 3 guys that were working in the railroad depot that got killed by this avalanche. And I guess only 23 people from, the 2 trains and the railroad workers who worked there at the time ended up surviving, or no, it was 23 people who survived the train wrecks, because at the time, there were several railroad employees who went racing down, and they started pulling out as many injured passengers out of these crushed cars as they could, and then they'd bring them up to like the hotel or other, like nearby buildings. And then what they did later on is the bodies were put on these like toboggans, and then they were brought down the west side of the mountain to the other trains. And then they'd put them on the trains, and then the trains brought them to Everett or Seattle or whatever. But because of the conditions and the horrible weather that continued to happen after March 1st, that they had to wait until, I think it was 21 weeks later, and it was July, when they could finally retrieve the rest of the bodies that were trapped on these trains. And there was like this one guy, because there was stuff in different newspaper articles and websites where this guy was talking. He was actually one of the survivors on the train in Wellington area that way. He talked about how there was like this electrical store that was just raging, and of the time when the avalanche hit, and he said you could see all this lightning just flashing, and it was so vivid. And he said that the wind was just howling down the canyon, and he said all of a sudden you heard this dull roar, and all the men and women that were sleeping in the passenger coaches, he said all of a sudden you could feel the coaches just lifted up and just went flat, because this is the guy that was in the train at the time when it happened. And he said you could feel the trains being lifted up, and they were just tossed, and it was just rolling. So people were just flipping from top to bottom, just like little balls in a box getting shook up, and I don't mean to say that in a disrespectful way. But he said that their coach thing that they were in, they said it rolled nearly like 1,000 feet, and they were buried under 40 feet of snow. Could you imagine surviving that? So, like I said, they couldn't get the rest of the bodies out until 21 weeks later, which is in July, and this was in March 1st till July. So it took several weeks to get this area cleaned up and the tracks repaired to allow trains to run again through the Stevens Pass. Well, of course, during this time, the Great Northern Railroad, they put up cement snow sheds over 9 miles of tracks to try to help protect the trains from any future snowslides after that incident over those switchbacks and stuff. And then I also read somewhere that in 1916, there was another snowslide that derailed another passenger train, killing 8 more people and injuring like 22. So that causes even more stuff in this area. You know what I'm talking about?
Wow.
Now, there's many who say that this area is very, very active because of all the lives that were lost there, and that there is also possibly residual a thing going on there as well, because sometimes when people are on like in the area and on that trail, because they made, like I said, okay, at the time they used this for a while, then they ended up stop using the switchback because they created another pass below this pass and a tunnel going through, so which was a lot safer and easier. So they stopped using that railway system doing the switchback, and then started using the newer one below Stevens Pass. So what they ended up doing is using Stevens later on, future time now, these are good hiking trails for us to use, so people can go up there and read it. But like I said, because of everything that occurred at that time and all the lives that were lost, they think that there's possibly a residual thing going on as well, because sometimes people, while they're on this trail, it'll be like summertime, and they'll hear sounds of like avalanche happening, and they say that you can hear these trees cracking and breaking, and like rocks are coming crashing down the side towards you, and it's a clear sunny summer day. So of course that's not happening, you know what I mean? And then there's people who have said that they've had experience with the paranormal while they're on the trail or in the older tunnel areas. But people are hearing disembodied voices of cries and whispering in the tunnel. And of course you have random cold spots, but you can have random cold spots in a tunnel or under a mountainside. I mean,
true, very true.
That one you can kind of debatable. But people talk about seeing these shadow entities or full body apparitions there too. Now people are hearing these voices throughout different areas of this trail with no one around them. And when people will stop at these different snow shed areas, they've said that they've heard this little girl crying or even screaming, and they're looking everywhere like somebody lost their kid or something, and there's nobody around. Or people talk about being touched, or they have their hair pulled. And people have actually captured EVPs. They've captured strange things on their video cameras while they're up there. Now, there is some of these videos up on YouTube that seems to have paranormal activity captured from the tunnel. I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys to decide, but there's this group. They're called NWPIA, and they have video and EVPs up on YouTube of the area where this train accident kind of happened. And in one video, it kind of does look like there's this thing where it's like, okay, you see the tunnel and you know you have like the cement blocks and it looks like this thing's peering around the side. So we'll leave it up to you guys to decide what you see or whatever, but it did look really interesting to me. But now the as far as the Iron Goat Trail goes, it's about a 6-mile loop round trip, and it starts off at Martin Creek Trailhead, and it's like this wide gravel trail with like wooden bridges, and you kind of go over like small creeks, and there's like a waterfall along the way, and then of course you're going to see like several different old tunnels that, you know, they allow you to go up to the openings, and then they have like these little plaques where you can like read the history of the area, and there's also some photos as well of the past of how they made this and what it looked like back then. But they advise everyone not to go into these tunnels, not to climb on the snow sheds, because they are dangerous. You know, they are unsafe because they could collapse at any time. You know, they're not taking care of this stuff. But you will see, like I said, several signs along the trailway that talk about the people who built this railroad system, showing the different photos, the different time period. But it's like really beautiful looking area. You know, you get to get yourself out into nature, you get to learn a little history, possibly have encounters with the paranormal or wildlife, you know. I mean, who knows? Maybe you'll meet like Bigfoot on the trail. You guys can just like sit down at one of the spots on the trail and just share like a little snack or something and swap paranormal stories. You know what I mean?
Well, you never know what you might see out in the woods. All kinds of animals out in nature, even Bigfoot.
Well, Washington seems to have a plethora of Bigfoot sightings.
I know.
I did actually read several different sightings where people had encounters, what they say, with a Bigfoot in the Cascade Mountain areas. You know, but we're going to save that for when we do cryptid states. But, you know, I guess when you go into these places or whatever, you know, people should also be aware that while you're out on these trails, you could encounter real wildlife, you know. And I think Washington, they do have like wolves, grizzly bears, mountain lions, black bears. So, I mean, you should be alert, be safe, but don't be afraid to go out and try these new things. Don't be afraid to go out in the mountains or try these trails and stuff, because they have maps. You can talk to the, do they call it the DNR out there, or what do they use? What do they call the people when you're going out on the state parks and trails and things like that?
The DNR?
Is it? I think so. I don't know why I gapped out. Normally I know this. But, you know, they do have a map. The trail's pretty well, you can see it. It's not like one of those tricky trails, and it's set where you can do the loop. It's pretty, go through all this and come and make your way back. But, you know what, I was thinking when I was reading about this railroad stuff and about the Great Northern Railroad thing, spooky, is like me and you should probably do a show on the railroad, because some of the stuff that they actually did back in the day was pretty shady.
Oh yeah.
And they had like a lot of crazy things that occurred. Because, okay, like the robber barons, you know what I mean? We should do a show like on the robber barons, those people. Because like, okay, the Great Northern, when they were building their tracks, they would often like purchase up these land. Oh, park rangers. Thank you, Miguel. I don't know. I can't think of that. We're doing a show next week on missing people in National Forest, and you think we'd know about park rangers. You know what I mean? I don't know why we didn't.
You would think, wouldn't you?
I know. But anyway, the Great Northern Railroad, you know, when they were building their tracks, they would often purchase up tons of land from the federal government, and they would end up reselling it to farmers one by one, and they would be taking hundreds and hundreds of acres from native land through the Dakotas and Montana. You know what I mean? So the railroad track alone is like a railroad company.
The history of the railroad has a long, bloody history.
Yeah. Well, that's
long, bloody, and shady. Right.
And plus all the immigrants that were here working and cutting through the mountains and building all this stuff out there. There's a lot of people who got killed, were just chucked to the side, died horrible deaths sometimes. And then these train wrecks.
And if they got hurt, there was nothing done for them.
Right. And then the train wrecks that occurred here, you know, that left a lot of, you know, people are talking about residual, but it seems to be these things are interacting with them in the woods. But some people would say, well, maybe it's from the train. Other people say, well, it's the nature spirits because they believe in little people, or, you know, there's so many different things that people say, that things that live in the wilderness that interact with people. But the Goat Iron Trail is definitely something you guys should go hit up. There's other trails around the area too, as well as different places that seem to be haunted. But Stevens Pass, with the history and everything that goes on there, and it seems like people who are even going there not looking for paranormal activity have had experiences. So it seems like it's a very active area for sure. You still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was afraid I lost you again. I was like, oh. No. But yeah, this is definitely, I mean, I love nature too. You love nature. But, you know, it's, with Washington, I found it's not just buildings, it's not just cemeteries, but there's also, you know, there was some roads. Sometimes you're going down roads and people are talking about seeing orbs and spirits and apparitions just hanging out on certain roads in different parts in Washington. And it's not just one or two people. It's like people of all ages from different types of jobs who are having weird encounters. So I just find Washington interesting, but not just paranormal, but with all the people who are constantly seeing UFOs, you know.
I know. It's like you said earlier, it's a hotbed for UFO sightings. It's in the fourth state of the highest most reports seen as far as unidentified flying objects. Where they come from, we don't know. And it's probably number one for Bigfoot sightings.
No, I don't think Washington is number one for the most reported encounters and sightings, but I think it's up there really close on top where a lot of people seem, because of, I mean, look at the state and all the land in the wilderness.
Well, you have Bigfoot sightings in every single state, except for Hawaii. I never saw where there was a Bigfoot sighting in Hawaii.
Did they talk about one in Nevada? Because I don't think I've ever heard about it.
Yeah, I remember one. I remember one in Nevada that was near that ranch. What was the name of that ranch?
Skinwalker Ranch?
Skinwalker Ranch. Isn't that in Nevada or is that in Utah?
I don't know. I'm gapping out. We did a show on it, and you know what, we do so much stuff, and you know, stuff just like. Psh.
I know it's hard to keep track of them. It's hard to remember them all.
I worked 10 hours today, so I'm lucky I even got the words out I did today. So.
Yeah.
And you know what, we almost made it through the whole show without your computer crashing. So.
I know, but hey, things happen. At least it was almost the whole show.
Oh, I know. At least your Kindle was right there, so we could hurry up and plug it in. Hopefully, we'll be able to figure out what's going on with your computer. And
I may have to put up a go-to fund or a fund me account or whatever it's called. Put on there, Spooky really needs a new computer.
Why don't you let everybody know what we're going to be doing next week?
Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming in and listening to us and sticking with us. I want to thank our mods, Nell and Richard, for doing a great job. And I want to thank Raven for a good show.
You almost called me Spooky, didn't you?
I almost did call you Spooky. Join us February 27th, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, when we discuss another viewer's request, Mysterious Disappearances in National Parks and Forests, Part 2. Tune in as we talk about several missing cases that have occurred in different locations across the country of people who have vanished without a trace, ranging in age from young children to experienced wilderness survivalists. And like I said, thank you for coming in. Please subscribe to us. Give us a like, and please share us with others on any social media site you may be a part of.
Yeah, thank you guys all for coming. And if you guys want to get a show reminder, you can either click here down on our Spooky Raven name and subscribe here on YouTube, or you can go to our website, anythingbutordinary2.wix.com/anythingbutordinary, and you can sign up for weekly email reminders for our live shows on YouTube, or you guys can just contact us there with any like show ideas or friendly banter or whatever. But we hope you guys have an amazing week, and we'll hopefully see you guys next Tuesday. Good night.
Good night.